Hello, and welcome to the webinar, Telehealth and Groups. My name is Karen Galbraith, and I'm the Training Projects Coordinator with the Pennsylvania Coalition Against Rape. Hang on, oh, there we go. You know what, I'm gonna go ahead and start over just because I'm not sure what happened.
Okay.
Hello, and welcome to the webinar, Telehealth and Groups. My name is Karen Galbraith, and I'm the Training Projects Coordinator for the Pennsylvania Coalition Against Rape. And I'm very excited to introduce our presenter for today's webinar. Alicia M. Cheeks is a licensed clinical social worker with over a decade of experience working with adults, children and families in outpatient, inpatient, mobile service and natural environment settings, residential treatment, forensic and private practice settings. She has clinical experience in specialized education in trauma treatment, behavioral issues, family dynamics, and mental health. Both her clinical and personal experiences as an educator, clinician, and community activist have contributed to her specialization in family systems, trauma, including symptomology, trauma-focused intervention, including the sanctuary model, and education and natural setting treatment and assessment. She is especially interested in educating professionals on the many faces of the human experience when influenced by time, culture, and technology in an ever-evolving society. So welcome, Alicia. We're excited to hear from you today. Before we get started, just a quick bit about PCAR. I apologize, I jumped ahead. So the Pennsylvania Coalition Against Rape, for those of you who may not be as familiar with us, is a statewide coalition that partners with local rape crisis programs all across the Commonwealth to provide help, hope, and healing to survivors of sexual violence and their families, as well as communities. So now, without further ado, Alicia, please take it away.
Thank you, Karen. I love the enthusiasm, so no worries, we got it. All right, so hello, everyone. We are going to be talking about telehealth and group therapy today. So I want to thank everyone just for tuning in, and I am hoping that I can give you some type of positive perspective and helpful tip in navigating telehealth when you are doing group work. So I just want to kind of talk about, for our introduction, just everything that we are dealing with as far as, the pandemic, going virtual, and what that's looked like. So realize, in any type of pandemic, there are going to be, various mental health themes and concerns that rise to the top because of the fact that, there's a huge level of human suffering, of, lack of predictability and consistency, which kind of makes a perfect storm. So at this time, in our world, realize that anxiety and depression have kind of become the norm for a lot of the clients that we interact with. And they're considered at this point common psychological reactions to the COVID-19 pandemic. So the question becomes, how do we square the circle? And when I say square the circle, I mean, when we were living in a world of face-to-face interactions and face-to-face service delivery, typically the rooms that we sat in were pretty square, right? Or excuse me, the format that we sat in was pretty circle. For group work, we, would sit in a circle, process through, group material, feelings, and thoughts. Whereas now, we are each typically in our own individual homes looking at a square. So it is important for us to understand how to adapt some of the techniques that we've utilized in our face-to-face interactions to the telehealth realm. So some group categories that typically are utilized would be one, asynchronous, and the second one is synchronous. So asynchronous typically deals with, messaging, it can be text messages, emails, versus synchronous when we talk about that version of group that typically focuses on more so phone, video communication back and forth. So that's what we'll be focusing on today, the synchronous group. So let's first talk about some ethical considerations. Because of the fact that telehealth and working virtually is a whole new beast outside of working face to face, there are some different changes and some things that we need to adapt. So confidentiality, that's first and foremost. When you are online, it cannot be assumed. And I mean that in the sense of if we are using an electronic health record that is actually HIPAA compliant, yes, the program is HIPAA compliant, but that does not mean that there won't be someone who walks into a room for one of the group participants while they're in a group session. That does not mean that there won't be a distraction or interruption from other group participants. So the interesting thing about doing group work online is that there is a considerable amount of control that is given and responsibility that is given to actually the client. Because of the fact that as group facilitators, we do not have as much environmental control as we once did. So we need to give more caution to preparing our groups, preparing our participants for some of those changes in order to come up with a plan that everyone can agree on to keep everyone safe. Practice boundaries when it comes to telehealth. Realize that even though we can pretty much call anyone by video anywhere throughout the country and throughout the world, typically we have practicing boundaries of staying within our state for those services. So that is something that is important when we are dealing with potential group members and potential locations that those members may be coming from or living in. And then safety planning. So when we are face to face with clients, it becomes a little bit easier to identify if there's a safety concern, jump right into action during a face-to-face session or a face-to-face group in order to keep that individual safe. But when we are operating through the telehealth lens, we do not have that proximity. So some of the things that we need to consider and also implement are things like making sure that we're having conversations with group members as far as where they are location wise at the beginning of our group session, just in case there's a client disclosure or a safety concern throughout that group session. So these are things that we definitely need to keep our eye on for ethical and safety reasons. So let's go into understanding the foundations of groups and why group treatment is so special. So when you are working with an individual one-on-one, and it's just you as the service provider in that individual, there's psychoeducation that's passed back and forth. There are skills that we can provide to the client, but group therapy takes on a whole nother level of healing. So I have here a Dr. Irvin Yalom, who I cite several times within the PowerPoint, but he came up with 11 therapeutic factors which influence the group to change and to heal. And I just want to briefly go into each of these factors. So the first factor is the installation of hope. So when we're talking about the installation of hope, the group is going to a lot of times instill a feeling of optimism, right? That whatever the issue is that the group is working on, that there is hope that they can get through it. Universality, that includes helping all of the group members understand and realize that they're not alone in anything that they feel, anything that they consider a problem, and any of the impulses that they're dealing with. The third one is going to be imparting information. So when we look at that information, we are looking at the fact that within a group, Each member is able to provide some education and also help empower each individual with knowledge. We're able to do that as well as the group facilitator. The next one is altruism, and that's allowing the clients to gain a sense of value and a sense of significance by helping other group members. So realize that each group member is not going to be at the same place within the recovery, within the treatment realm, right? So for a lot of times, you will see, or in a lot of situations, you will see group members that are on either side of recovery or on the spectrum of recovery, kind of reaching that hand out in order to help other group members get to the place that they would like to get to. When we talk about corrective recapitulation, that is providing resolution for family experiences, for childhood events that have happened within the safety of the group, right? So realize that the group almost takes on a sense of its own as a family. So being able to allow each member to work through some of those difficult moments within their origin becomes a stepping stone for them to be able to move forward. The social development piece is huge. Being able to socialize with group members who you've built a therapeutic relationship with kind of helps you then develop those skills for out in the real world. And that includes the imitative behavior as well. So, group members learn to engage in coping strategies. They learn to take on other perspectives outside of their own just by their consistent interaction in a group setting. So I'm going to skip down to just the group cohesiveness, and that's giving every member a sense of belonging, a sense of value, a sense of acceptance. And then the catharsis, which also helps release those emotions that have been suppressed in order to kind of bring those healthy living tips and skills that they have learned to the top. And then the existential factors. So that's incorporating how we just exist as part of something that's larger than ourselves. And being a part of a group is a great model for that. You are one member within this group. So those are the 11 therapeutic factors. And just focus on those factors. Realize that the group as a whole has its own special way of helping each member that's a part of that whole. So now we're going to lay the foundation. When we are creating a telehealth group and we are just getting to the point of figuring out what members are appropriate, even in a face-to-face group, there is a pre-group screening. Okay, so there are going to be certain individuals, certain themes that are not necessarily appropriate for the telehealth group realm. A lot of those screening measures are going to be similar to what we look at for in-person group, and there are some differences. So one of the major differences, or two differences I wanted to talk about, was that when we are looking at telehealth groups, those individuals that are in acute crisis, those individuals who have increased dysregulation may not be appropriate for an online group. And the reason why is if you are in current current safety concerns, that might not be a good idea for triggering things to be discussed in a group, whereas it might push you to a point of feeling like you're not able to deal with those things within the group setting. You also might need some supports that are emergency supports. So it's important for us to look at where on the spectrum the individual is to make sure that the group being online is the best option for them. And that's also including those individuals dealing with severe depression. If we have individuals who are unable to keep themselves safe, expecting them to be a part of an online group where there aren't really any supports that are close by might not be the best decision for them. So some benefits of group work done through telehealth would include things like working on intimacy challenges, So in a lot of the research that I did, it talked about how people with intimacy problems who do not show enough improvement in an in-person group oftentimes are able to feel more comfortable through the video lens, because there's almost like a shield there. And within the group work, they are still able to work on those intimacy challenges. Individuals with social anxiety, where being a part of a huge group might be very triggering, they are able to have more control online. So maybe we have an individual who first starts the group with their camera off, or their camera off for a portion of the group. And then as they get more comfortable, they're able to start kind of pulling back that wall and actually having their camera on. And then the same was true for individuals who have a personality disorder diagnosis, and those individuals who may be struggling with attachments. So some successes of group work through telehealth. It definitely saves time, right? You are not having to travel very far if you are online, and it does have the ability to save money. Depending on how the group is funded, um, I know that there are various insurance companies that are engaging in cost share options where they pick up the entire bill, where the client does not have to pay a copay if it is a telehealth service because of the pandemic. So that can be something that saves the client money. For us as therapists and human service providers, it provides an observation into the natural setting of the individuals that are a part of the group. And that can be a very invaluable uh, measure as far as understanding the environment that each of the group members interacts in. And then it also can be less stigmatizing for the client. If you are able to do things from the comfort of your own home, if you feel like you have more control over your participation and what you look like, where you are, that gives you more power and control, and can easily become um, less of a negative viewpoint regarding the treatment. But we do have some barriers. Um, when we look at access to technology, realize that not everyone has access to a working computer, or internet, or Wi-Fi. Not everyone has access to even a room that is only them, where they can share in a safe manner and not worry about other people hearing from their home. um, a lot of the research that I've done just talks about the fact that, telehealth is great, but what about for populations like older adults who might not necessarily have the understanding of, computers and technology, and trying to figure out at this point how that education is given so that, that population still has access, regardless of if they're able to go face to face or not. So within my research, there were four most common obstacles regarding online group therapy. And I want to just break down for you guys point by point what those look like. So the first one is managing the frame of treatment. And then we have the disembodied environment, the question of presence, and then the transparent background. And I actually realized that I missed completely the transparent background slide, but no worries. I will get you guys the information and just go ahead and slide it in there so you guys will not even know. So first, managing frame of treatment. So when we are looking at the setting for the group work or the group therapy, when we are face to face, realize there's a whole host of control that we have as therapists, as human service workers. So some of the ways that we might have control over our environment would include the furniture that we decide to put in the office, the music that we have playing in the waiting area. That makes all the difference. Like having a great song list and a client being able to, decompress even in the waiting area brings like a certain energy to treatment. Um, Something as small as making sure that you have tissues placed in a room where everybody can get to them, especially if you know it's going to be a challenging session. Those are all the ways that we're able to control our environment to help our clients and the individuals we serve um, feel as comfortable as possible in moments of vulnerability. We do not have that over video. We do not have the ability to, move furniture around so everyone sits comfortably. And a lot of times we don't even have the ability to offer a Kleenex. So when we look at the virtual realm of group, we're looking more so at what's called dynamic administration. So while we can't put tissues in the middle of the room, while we can't play like the most amazing soundtrack before therapy, we can do things like um, set up the virtual room where clients have uh, instructions as far as how to get into your waiting area, what to expect, and how long to expect to wait until the group starts. Um, we are able to control, what the expectations are for the group and being able to handle with clients when boundary issues come up. And even understanding what the expectations are, if you need to leave the group or if you need to excuse yourself. Some of those things are able to, or excuse me, most of those things allow us to gain that control of the environment to help make clients more comfortable and again, those vulnerable points. Um, so one of the interesting things for online groups are, and I talked about this earlier, when we are face to face with a group and we are facilitating a group, we have control over the privacy of the group. So of course, you probably have the door shut. You probably have, a sound maker on the opposite side of the door. Um, you've had your clients sign paperwork saying that what is said in group stays in group. You don't have that type of control online. So it's important for you to realize that the client actually becomes responsible for privacy within the group. And the way that we're able to acknowledge that change of responsibility is having upfront conversations with our clients, but also having our clients work with us to establish those healthy boundaries and expectations to make sure that privacy is upheld. Sorry, just looking over my notes to make sure I got everything here. Yes. Okay. So the disembodied environment. So in any close relationship, including the therapeutic relationship that exists in group work, the existence of the bodies of the participants and the encounters that we have in the past has seemed necessary. So what I'm saying is, for groups in the past, especially face-to-face groups, there had to be bodies in the chair for this process to actually work, right? That is not the case anymore. While we do regulate one another through body interactions, there are still ways that we're able to navigate that through, the lens of the camera. Um, So the interpersonal neurobiological approach claims that we regulate each other through the interactions that we have, right? So my body and my thoughts and my perspective are being regulated based off of the people that I am interacting with. However, that interaction still happens through the lens, but there's some things that we lose um, through telehealth that need to be balanced out. So one of the things that we lose is the eye to eye contact. Oftentimes, as human beings, that eye to eye contact can, disarm us from negative emotions, can make us feel safe. But you see some individuals struggling with how to connect on the video because, of course, we're not able to really do the eye to eye. So it also is going to affect our interactions as co-leaders. So if I have a co-leader of a group, no longer am I able to, just solely focus on giving my co-leader a look or making a face and my co-leader being able to read through that. So there's a definite decreased capacity for nonverbal communication within our groups while we're online. However, there is a closer focus on what I like to call our moneymaker, our face. So the camera lens allows more focus on the face, the facial expressions, the gaze, and what that looks like. And it also allows us to have increased understanding based on those observations of the face. So some things that we can do, or some things that are tips in order to deal with the fact that there aren't a lot of body interactions physically that we have with each other, would be things like, for the co-leaders, making a decision on if some of those conversations co-leader wise will happen out loud in front of group members, or if it needs to be a chat that happens. For instance, we're using Zoom. So if there needs to be a private chat between co-leaders in order to verbalize different messages, um, and how we are dealing with emotional regulation or dysregulation, since we do not necessarily have the eye contact to reduce that fight or flight response and those emotional escalations. If we could just back up one slide. Thank you. So I just wanted to also talk about the fact that as group leaders, we also have to be aware of understanding facial expressions for our clients. So being sensitive to those facial expressions is going to allow us to get more information about how the client is truly feeling. It is also going to allow us to encourage that client to put words to the facial expression. So, one thing that I think is super beneficial as a tip is to realize that there should be a lot more questions that are happening through telehealth than what typically was during face-to-face interactions. It is okay to say to our clients, I'm kind of seeing this in your face. Am I reading you correctly? In order to make sure that we have the most clarity and the observations that we believe that we're seeing at that point. So again, what is missing in the body-to-body communication or reading body language, the therapist can always ask the client to report what they're feeling. The client can always ask, for that check-in in order to better understand. All right, so the question of presence. So when we talk about therapeutic presence, that is simply the idea of bringing one's whole self to the session in order to engage with the client. So when we say whole self, that means when you step into that group session, you are mentally present, you are physically present, you are emotionally present in order to help the group navigate through the things that are discussed. So of course, the physical presence becomes the difficult issue within telehealth, because of course, not all group members are in the same room, and the facilitator typically is not in the same room. But engagement can also take the form of how much we share as human service professionals. So utilizing appropriate self-disclosure is going to be huge in telehealth. And I think typically for therapists or service providers, when we think of disclosure, there's this idea of we have to have, healthy boundaries. We have to have that boundary where, the focus is on the client. And that is absolutely correct. Healthy boundaries are essential. And, not everything needs to be self-disclosed, but in the time period that we are in, being able to, disclose on a level that may assist your client in helping to understand that they are not alone, or that there are other people that deal with those themes, are going to be huge in your ability to be present in that moment. One of the other ways that we need to be present is by taking responsibility for mistakes that we may make. So whether that's that we didn't provide the empathy that should have been provided, or maybe that means that there was a miscommunication that we didn't realize, or something we didn't observe. Being able to take accountability for that mistranslation is huge, and being able to say, I am with you, I am here, I am present, at this time period. Did we skip over one? No. Okay. So the final one, and actually, can we go back to the last slide? So the final area is the transparent background that we had talked about. And within the transparent background, it is basically learning to ignore the background activities that are happening. So there is a boundary and a line there. So when we are in face-to-face groups, you typically will not have a random dog or random cat just walk past you, attempting to engage with group members, right? But online, with people, participating in groups from their own homes, and from various places, you will probably have the occasional, pet walk in and want attention, or someone unknowingly, enter into a room. So being able to, ignore those things that don't necessarily need to be announced is important, but also realizing that, there are some noises, some distractions that are not healthy for the group, and being able to realize what's healthy, what's not healthy, and what to address. All right, so here are some virtual group therapy tips that I have for you guys, just based off of trying to build that connection with each member, as your therapy process moves forward. So the first thing is reviewing technology and questions with each member before the first session and even during the first session. So when we are establishing those guidelines, when we are aligning on those rules and those boundaries, the group is going to go a lot smoother. But one of the best things that you can do as a facilitator is helping your clients understand what to expect. So that might be, having a one-on-one with each group member to go over how Zoom works, or how, the client may be able to engage in raising their hand through the technology that you're using. So being able to help them prepare helps you prepare, in the long run. The second thing is having crisis contact information on hand during each meeting. So one of the things that I talked about earlier in our PowerPoint was making sure that you're aware of where your client is location-wise during each meeting, in case there's a safety concern. So having, that crisis contact information and that plan from the very beginning allows you to help keep your client safe, and allows, your clients to help have a hand in keeping themselves safe. So the next thing, discuss privacy and security within the telehealth software. So realize that while a lot of us are used to and finding a new norm in telehealth, not every person will feel comfortable. So one of the best things that you can do for each of your clients is to help them understand what's confidential, what's not confidential, and how the program that you're using supports that confidentiality piece. The next one is my favorite: beware of clients in cornfields. So my mom used to make this joke, and she would say, "Shh, beach, we're in a cornfield, and basically that would mean that there were ears all around. So I don't know if you got that, but ears of corn. Haha. So being aware that clients might not be operating in rooms by themselves. So if they are not being able to handle that, and having those guidelines in place so that clients know what's expected of them. Realize that confidentiality, that ability to feel safe when you're vulnerable is huge, and it is required for group work in order for the group to move forward. And then observing each participant, right? So realize when you're with groups, one of the hardest things to do is to keep your focus on, everyone instead of just the person that's talking. But try to keep an eye out on that, because there will be individuals that share more. There will be individuals that share less. And the thing about group work is everyone should have opportunities to share. So we want to make sure that we are focused on that. Establishing an outline for each session is extremely important. It, number one, helps with the meeting going smoothly. It creates a plan of action. But I believe that the outline should also have places within it where clients and group members are actually able to, put their suggestions or their talking points on there, so that they feel heard as well. So typically what I suggest is, creating a skeleton of an outline for yourself as the facilitator, and asking the group, when the group starts, if anyone has anything else that they would like to be added. Use what you have. I think that's the best thing about telehealth. It's the fact that, you can use the things that are in your natural environment, and you can ask the clients and the group members to use the things in their natural environment. So some of the examples that I have utilized for group members is for them to, show me objects within their home that have meaning, right? So what are some things that have meaning to you and are important to you? For kids, I've done show and tell where, I allow them to pick one thing within their home that means the most to them. And that gives you a window into, their values and the things that are important. Safe place. So for some group members, you typically in your home, there's one space that you feel like is that safe space when the world has beat you down. And if you have group members who are actually operating out of their natural environment, you might have the pleasure of being able to see some of those safe places, and that's important. And then lastly, the ability to enlist natural supports that may live with, the group member. And while those interactions with natural supports might not happen within the group time period, it's always good as a therapist to have an understanding of what those systems look like. So not everyone is going to react to telehealth the same way. Again, for a lot of our kids, they have been doing Zoom school and everything under the sun. So there are going to be some individuals that are more comfortable with telehealth. But if you have a group member that may not be that comfortable, it's important for you to try to find a way to connect and meet them where they are. So some examples that I give, and a lot of times I see this with kids, is kind of that deer in headlights look, where it's like, I'm not sure. So some of the things that I have tried include, utilizing group games. And I'll be honest, games help whether you are 5, whether you are 65, 75. So things like I Spy, Simon Says. There is a app called Drawasaurus, where it's pretty much like a picture charades game. Some of these things can be used as icebreakers so that you are simply focused on building the rapport first, and allowing the client to begin trusting the process of just opening up to someone outside of themselves.
So thank you, Alicia, so much for such wonderful guidance and insight into how we can all be providing group services through telehealth. We certainly want to acknowledge the funding that made the webinar possible, and obviously thank everyone for joining us today for the webinar. I'm going to click ahead to the slides where Alicia has listed all of the references and resources she used to create the presentation. So if there are any of those you'd like to check out, I also encourage you, if you have additional questions or would like more information about providing telecounseling services or other issues related to sexual harassment or abuse or assault, that you reach out to pcar.org.